What's up, everyone? We are back today. New fan casting, new DC team, and I'm really excited about this one today because we're going to be covering one of my favorite shows of all time, arguably my favorite superhero TV show ever, Doom Patrol, a show I highly recommend to everyone. It does not get the attention it deserves at all. Everyone needs to be watching Doom Patrol. It's so worth it. It's so good. I promise you, you will not be disappointed. Should have been such a much bigger presence at the awards, some Emmys, Globes, anything. It SAGs. It's a show that deserves so much more attention than it's getting. You can find it on HBO Max. Two seasons right now. I guarantee you, will be some of the wildest and most emotional times you can have, and I highly recommend the show. And one of my favorite parts about the show is its cast. I think the cast and directors did a fantastic job bringing the people, the core people of the show together to bring these characters to life. And I guess today I'm just gonna take a stab and say, like, who else could portray these characters? Who else would be a good fan cast for this crazy group of characters? So I'm just gonna go in the order of which they were, like, kind of chronologically appeared through the show. So first, we're gonna start with the founder of the team, which is Dr. Niles Calder, aka the Chief. So if you look at him, if you look up an image of him online, you see he's an old guy in a wheelchair, and I think most people would automatically just go, "Oh, it's Professor X from the X-Men." Not really, actually. I mean, sure, they do share some, like, oh, we're bringing together a group of people that are, like, separated from society or whatnot, but there's a far darker edge to the Chief. And I understand in recent comics, Charles Xavier has been making some pretty, like, tough choices, but, like, for the most part, like, Professor X in his uh, overall character state is, like, he's the benevolent one. He's the one who believes humans and mutants can coexist. The Chief is, to not spoil the show, is more of a schemer in a way. He's a very complex character, very complicated person who's made some very, for lack of a better word, interesting, to keep it vague, some very interesting, some very dark choices. And he's a man with a lot of secrets. But he's also still as, like, that sort of classic mentor energy. And it's that weird mix of, like, this man is has a lot of darkness inside of him, but we also, like, look to him for guidance, and, like, a lot of that energy is how the character operates. And I think nobody would bring it better. I mean, Timothy Dalton, who plays the Chief, already does it perfectly. He was such a great casting. But if I had to offer up an alternative, I would say Sir Anthony Hopkins. Silence of the Lambs, it's Dr. Hannibal Lecter. He's in the last Transformers movie as well, in The Last Night. He's one of the greatest. Westworld's another example too. He's one of the greatest actors, still working today. And I think he would really excel at being that, like, mentor figure who, like, you accept advice from, but you're also in your head, or, like, questioning, like, that's definitely not, there's definitely more to what he's telling, and you're, like, left in a state of, like, you go from inspired to, like, uneasy. And I think he carries a lot of that. Hannibal Lecter is one of the greatest villains in film history, and that was not the same as the Chief, but, like, similar to that, like, 10 steps ahead, sort of chess master, like, intellectual who's, like, always, like, in a state of, like, just planning and whatnot. It also varies in thing. Also, another thing about Lecter is a very high spoken, very mannerly person, carries a lot over to Westworld as well, like a person with a lot of secrets who's very well spoken and very much an academic, but you also get the sense that, like, there's something, like, off about him. So there's a little screw loose. And also, just to bring in the Transformers performance, which honestly, like, was one of my favorite part about that movie, Transformers: The Last Night. Hopkins can definitely play against crazy really well. Doom Patrol is a show that gets weird really fast, and Transformers prove that Hopkins can really enthusiastically play, like go off kilt. He can go along with the energy if need be, and he can do it convincingly without feeling, like, out of place. And I think he'd be a great Chief to say. Yeah, I think he'd be great. Moving on to Rita Farr. This was actually the fastest one. I feel like there's always, every time we do a fan cast, there's always one where, like, the image pops into my head and I'm like, no, that's it. I don't need to consider anymore. Like, she's it. April Balby again kills it as Rita. She's so awesome. She should have been nominated for an Emmy. But if I had to again to offer up an alternative, Mad Men's Christina Hendricks. She played Joan Harris, who's one of my favorite female characters on TV ever, and she'd fit the character of Rita so well. A boss woman who very direct with her words, who is very knowledgeable about what she wants, but also a person who is hurting and hurting and dealing with so much, especially in Mad Men's Mad Men is a show ripe for great acting, and you see the character of Joan go through so much anguish and hard choices, and she has to do a lot of self-reflection and reflection upon other people about what she wants, and whether or not um whether or not it's realistic or not. And I think she's just a really great portrayer of that very like direct but also hurting character. She was also had a role as the villain of Toy Story 4, which I think was actually a pretty good voice acting role. Another character of another instance of a character who wanted something but wasn't sure how to properly achieve it and was just left in a state of anguish and had making different difficult choices. Um, she's a small role in Drive, which she did. She killed it as well in there. She's just a Christina Hendricks would just really fit the character of Rita Farr really well. She also really looks like the character. She and April Balby, she already has red hair. They look very similar, and I think she'd be very similar personality wise. Moving on to the test pilot, that is Larry Traynor. This was a tricky one. I almost casted actually Chris Pine in the role of Larry because I think to be Larry, you have to be a very subtle, very um, just a very subtle but very intense persona, but not intense and like a Batman, haunted by my past, but very melancholy, days. That's I think that's the way Larry often goes throughout a lot of these episodes, just in this melancholy driven days of ruminating and very a lot of internalizing. And I ultimately decided to go with Jonathan Groff over Chris Pine because I think Groff, if you know from the little bit I've seen of Mindhunter to research and just to what I've heard about the show, he's really great at being this conflicted and very emotionally intense person, a person who has a lot of feelings stirred up and has to confront a lot of stuff, and who's scared to acknowledge some things about himself, but ultimately he's forced to anyway. And there's a lot of breakthrough with that. But also if you've seen Hamilton or what is the play? I believe Spring Awakening. I think Spring Awakening. He's just really good at also being a very like witty and charming persona. Sometimes without even trying to be, just a person with a lot of energy that still vibrates amidst the melancholy. And I think Groff does. I think Groff would be a really entertaining pick. It's hard to replace Matt Bomer as Larry, but I think Jonathan Groff can bring to life the bandage test pilot that is Larry Traynor, aka Negative Man. So moving along, we move to Crazy Jane. One of definitely a hard role to cast because you need someone that could keep up with literally 64 different characters. I mean, Crazy Jane, Diane Guerrero should have been. All of them should have been nominated for an Emmy. Diane Guerrero, the most. I think her performance throughout the show, particularly in the season one episode Jane Patrol, was just incredible. She deserves so much more recognition for what she's doing on the show. It's insane. And the Crazy, I mean, you got to jump through so much. You got to jump through different creature, almost different, very different personas, different emotional states within the prime personality that is Jane. You got to jump around a lot, and I think I decided to keep the Broadway theme going, and I actually decided to cast Samantha Paulie as Crazy Jane. Probably the most unknown actress out of my bunch, but I'm really confident. I'm not really confident. I'm sure. I know she would be amazing in the role. Paulie is known for Six the Musical, which is a personal favorite of mine, and she plays um She plays the character Catherine Howard. Whew, what to say about Catherine Howard? I think like especially her big solo song, "All You Want to Do," is such a great song. Like that's also like ripe for acting, like powerful acting, because it's a song that takes you on a journey, and you see her shift moods so well, but so subtly that like it's this like you see the change and you see the shift, and she does it so convincingly. She can portray damage and broken very effectively and very heartbreakingly, but also portray um, very sassy, very sarcastic, very um, like very like I really like. This is a like how to best to put it. Just she's really good at just portraying that confident energy that she knows what she is, she knows what she's doing. She really could care less about what anyone else says. She's vibing on her own, but also like she brings to life that very like scarred interior out really really well. Six hasn't opened up on Broadway just yet. The soundtrack slaps. I highly recommend listening to it if you're musical fan or not, and just in general. And I think to portray Crazy Jane, Samantha Paulie would be amazing in the role. She's already amazing as Catherine Howard, and I think Catherine Howard, which is just in some ways, not to spoil anything about Howard or Crazy Jane, they both in some ways have similar personas, and I think Paulie would be great at just bring to life um, this very intense, but also like tender character. Several moments just of her like with scenes with her with Larry and with our next character Cliff Steele, aka Robot Man. Just a character who's always dealing with a person who's shouldering a lot of responsibility and burden, but like just such a strong persona throughout. So yeah, Samantha Paulie as Crazy Jane is my unorthodox pick, but it's also the pick that just feels right. Moving on, we have Robot Man. To be Robot Man, you just need to go like he is the loudest person on this show. He's the person that's always just yelling, and you can never tell if it's going to be comedic or if it's going to be emotionally intense because Brendan Fraser just does Robot Man so well. It's such a great voiceover performance, and I thought this was another one that like once I thought about it, it just clicked. I was like, yeah, no, that this works 100%. I casted Sam Rockwell. Sam Rockwell, another underrated actor. Even though he won an Academy Award already for Three Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri, I think he would do so well at just he can be off kilter. If anyone's seen Jojo Rabbit or even hints of Three Billboards, he can be like a really like over the top, a really like expressive character who's like has no filter sometimes, like Cliff Steele. If there's one way to describe him, is he has no filter sometimes, for better for worse. I think Sam Rockwell brings that out in a very comedic aspect really well. But also to be Cliff Steele, you need to be reoccurring theme with all these characters, a very emotionally intense, very burnt up, very torn up character. And I think if you look at the movie Moon, if you look at, again, to refer to Three Billboards, hell, even to go back to Jojo Rabbit and see near the end, not to spoil, you see he's much more like emotive, like sensitive character. And he, I think also like he has the voice. I don't know. That's another key thing. Him and Groff would be primarily voiceover roles. I think they both have the voice to like just portray and bring the life to these characters, even though like their faces are going to be covered up by their costumes. I think both Groff and Rockwell specifically to Robot Man would be a really powerful portrayal of the character. Not to say anything again for Brendan Fraser. And finally, we move to Cyborg. Um, Joy Van Wege is done a great performance as Cyborg in the show. He does really well as the show's like straight man against the others like comedic like roles, and to this is such a great portrayal of Cyborg. I've got to say, him and Ray Fisher like really killed it for their respective properties to bring this character to life, and I want to shout out them as a Cyborg fan. And to portray Cyborg, what can I say? I went with star of the Star Wars sequels, John Boyega, or one of the stars technically of the sequel trilogy, John Boyega as Cyborg. He I mean, he's great. He's underrated as hell. He knows what he's doing. Even like to go through his Star Wars role quickly, I guess specifically Force Awakens, since Disney wastes him later in the trilogy. That's another conversation though. But you see him being the sort of like he can keep up with the more comedic elements, stuff like him trying to convince Daisy Ridley's Ray that like he's with the good guys and he's trying to act confident. He's trying to BS his way through a situation, even though he has no idea what's happening. You see elements of him also being very like vulnerable and like just honest with himself and with others. I think says a lot, would translate well to Cyborg's humanity, and is more like um, down to earth, not really down to earth, just more like open and honest persona. I feel like Cyborg is a character that like talks the most. I mean, he is, not to spoil too much about season two, but like he is the only character of this show to actually go to therapy, and he's just seems to be much more like his character seems to be willing to be more comfortable with his own skin, and you look to Pacific Rim Uprising, or even to his Golden Globe winning performance in Small Axe episode Red, White, and Blue. He is just really good at also portraying like a character who is um, heroic. Yeah, Cyborg is the only like legitimate. I mean, they're all heroes in their own right. Chief, notwithstanding, but like he's the most like legitimate. Like he's worked the Justice. He makes references to the Justice League in the show or whatnot. But like Boyega has that leading man of like yeah, I've been there, I've done it, while also portraying a sort of like more quieter like a quieter side that portrays like insecurities and you know um personal like hopes and dreams that like have like crashed and burned maybe or haven't fulfilled the same way. And I think Boyega is capable of bringing that out really. And yeah, I think he'd be a great Cyborg. Yeah, he's another one I really hope DC like picks up and uses, because bring that credit along. He's already got a lot of momentum going behind him. So just to recap, we got Anthony Hopkins, Academy Award winner Anthony Hopkins as the Chief. We got Christina Hendricks as Rita Farr, Jonathan Groff as Larry Traynor, Samantha Paulie, God bless her, as Crazy Jane, God bless her, the character, Sam Rockwell as Robot Man, John Boyega as Cyborg. A really great group of actors on their own right, and I think somewhere in the multiverse that this group got brought together to portray these characters, it'd be incredible. It'd be a match made in heaven, if not already, for the great casting done by already on the Doom Patrol show. But yeah, that's my fan cast. I recommend checking out not just the show, but also these actors. Support them any way they can. They're really awesome. They are so talented at what they do, and they're yeah, they'll be fine. They're so awesome. And yeah, that's about it. Check back again here. We've got more stuff coming up, new fan cast, new reviews, a lot of exciting things happening. And yeah, watch Doom Patrol, support these actors, and see you next time. Peace out. Take care, everyone.